For years, Vladimir Putin has been nurturing the idea of a Russia that is once again great and powerful. In today's Russia, things like prosperity, standards of living, and welfare are secondary. What matters, what really matters, is the image of power. We have seen this illustrated through the terrible fury Putin has unleashed in Ukraine, a place where he had nothing to gain except the narrative. So, how does Putin manage to inject this sentiment into Russian society? What is the Kremlin doing to boost patriotism? And to what extent is the army being used for this purpose? Today on VisualPolitik, we are going to answer these questions. But first, let's take a look at a bit of history. Have you heard about Russia's young army cadets national movement? Well, listen up.
Young Armia, the Young Army.
The years directly following the fall of the Soviet Union were very complicated for Russia. The country fell into absolute ruin. Inflation soared, the ruble lost most of its value, and the crown jewels of the economic fabric were appropriated by oligarchs. We are talking about difficulties that also extended to the army. The shortfalls of the Russian armed forces were exposed after their intervention in Georgia in 2008. That was a real turning point. This is something that we covered in a recent video about Russia's strengths. I'll leave you the link in the description. After this war, Putin launched a profound military reform, a reform for which the Russian president received significant assistance. The price of oil was breaking all historic records, and thus filling the Kremlin's usual meager coffers. There was no longer any need to skimp, so Russian military spending roughly doubled between the years 2005 and 2018. Although there are no officially confirmed figures, experts point out that Russian military spending, actual spending, exceeds $50 billion annually. That's approximately 4% of Russian GDP. Over the last decade, Russia has made a major investment effort into new equipment. For example, during this time, more than 600 new aircraft, 840 helicopters, and 2,300 drones were added to the armed forces. The Kremlin has revamped 70% of its fighter planes and 27% of its armored vehicles. Russia's military industry has also developed new technological capabilities. Along these lines, Russia's electronic warfare tools, which can be used to intercept or block enemy communications and drones, and are considered to be able to give those of the United States a run for their money. But hold on a minute, because the Putin government still has a few million left over to do other kinds of things. For example, from 2021, a 4-year, $185 million program is underway with a single goal: to increase the patriotic education of Russians. Yes, that's correct. Among other things, these plans include getting at least 600,000 children to join the ranks of the Armia, the Russian Young Army Cadets. They can join from the age of 8 until they reach the age of majority. Armia is certainly a worthy heir to the young pioneers of the Soviet era. You see, the Vladimir Lenin All-Union Pioneer Organization was the youth organization used by the Soviet Union to promote the ideological principles of communism. It existed between 1922 and 1990 and brought together boys and girls between the ages of 10 and 15. Membership peaked at 25 million members in the 1970s. The organization had the so-called Young Pioneer Palaces. They served as meeting centers where the young people participated in games, manual labor, and some sports activities. Then during summer vacations, these young people went to the Young Pioneer camps. They were like the Scouts and the Girl Guides, but with communist insignia on their backpacks. But it went much further than games and camps. At the age of 15, the pioneers could join the Komsomol, another youth organization that served as a gateway to the Communist Party. Of course, compared to the Soviet era, Putin's Armia has no links to communism, but has become an organization focused primarily on the military. It places special emphasis on patriotism and service to the armed forces, with a training program led by reserve officers. What's more, the Armia even has its own uniform. The uniform of the Armia is a classic, khaki-coloured military outfit, but with a very characteristic element on the head. Its members wear red berets, with an insignia bearing the Armia logo. Nothing less than the red star of the Russian army, superimposed on the head of an eagle. Among the activities undertaken by this youth organisation are rifle practice, first aid training, and martial arts fighting. Once a year, the Russian Ministry of Defense organizes the Unarmia Congress, and that is where you can find everything. Nationalist rallies, weapons on display everywhere, sports competitions among members, and even a science fair to attract the brainiest of the brainiacs. And very important, in order to set the mood, a DJ plays new versions of the old patriotic tunes with the addition of hip-hop effects. All with one goal, to show young Russians that nothing is cooler than the young army cadets. They have it well thought out. Surely all of this is more attractive than just drumming into them the solemn oath of the Unarmia. Warning, what follows is a reduced version of this oath, lest the full version induce in some of you an unusual Russian patriotism. Check it out.
I swear to strive for victories in studies and sports, to be a patriot and a worthy citizen of Russia. Excerpt from the oath of the Unarmia.
But hold on a minute, because this is not the only strategy the Russian government is using to promote patriotic military education amongst the young. It also finances private entities that organize contests with disciplines as varied as knowledge of Russian history and others more useful in a future war scenario, such as map reading or shooting tests with weapons. But if there is one thing the Kremlin has really gone all out on, it has been to build something that looks capable of promoting patriotism for the whole family. Something that will thrill children and adults alike. We are talking about nothing short of an entire theme park. And guess what? Pack your bags, because we're going on a trip.
Patriot Park, Russia's Disneyland.
European children dream of going to Disneyland Paris. North American ones dream of going to Disney World in Orlando. Well, Putin has made it his mission to make everyone in Russia want to go to Patriot Park. And yes, sure, it would be nice to have roller coasters in the park, but let's say that the Kremlin's intentions go in another direction. We are talking about a military theme park dedicated to the Russian army, located in the town of Kubinka, an hour's drive from Moscow. And the Russian Ministry of Defense has spared no expense. It has set aside about 250 million euros. That's 280 million US dollars for construction, and everything has been taken care of down to the smallest detail. For example, they say that the food consists of army rations. And of course, you have to wonder if such a level of realism is really needed. But be that as it may, the park is designed for the enjoyment of the whole family. Although once again, as usually happens with these types of facilities, the idea is to particularly impress the youngest ones, but in the best style of Putin's Russia. In this park, young people can participate in activities that are completely different from what we are used to seeing in amusement parks. For example, despite the incredible graphics, kids are probably sick of playing war in video games, so being able to touch a real gun and even fire a shot or two is a real drawcard. Nor should other activities, such as virtually driving a tank, using a 3D printer, or participating in the training of trained dogs, be underestimated. In addition, at Patriot Park, visitors can get up close to a lot of tanks, armoured transport vehicles, and missile launching systems from all eras. You could say it's a complete tour through Russia's war history. And take note, because Patriot Park is also a place for business. Year after year, the park hosts a new edition of the Army Forum. This is an international event where Russia exhibits its latest military toys. Of course, without going into detail, there are always the foreign delegations sent by Putin's friends. After all, the main buyers of Russian arms are well known: India, Vietnam, China and Bangladesh in Asia, Iran and Iraq in the Middle East, Algeria and Egypt in Africa, Nicaragua and Venezuela in the Americas. In any case, it is clear that this type of forum is always a good place to do business.
Russia uses defense show to try and boost arms sales to Middle East.
Do you want an example? Then look at this. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates are very interested in Russian weapons. Let's just say they have had some problems with buying them from other countries because of the war in Yemen. So they dropped by to see what they could pick up. But well, that's another story, because the real purpose of this installation is to make the Russians see the full might of their country's armed forces. The victory in World War II, which they know as the Great Patriotic War, is by far the main argument used to appeal to the emotions of visitors. Years ago, they even organised a large reenactment of the storming of the Reichstag. In addition, in the theme park, there is also an interactive museum called the 1418 Steps to Victory. This is precisely the number of days that elapsed from the moment Hitler declared war on the Soviet Union until the moment Germany surrendered. And yes, I know what many of you are thinking, but Josh, so many towns have quirky museums. What's the fascination fascination with this one? Well, basically, because I have not told you yet about the most remarkable thing about Patriot Park. It's something that tells us a lot about what Russia is like nowadays. I'm referring to nothing less than the main cathedral of the Russian armed forces. This cathedral was consecrated in 2020 to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. Its exterior is like any other Orthodox cathedral, except for its khaki green colour. More interesting is its interior. In the stained glass windows, religious images give way to Soviet war medallions, and the diameter of its main dome is 19.45 meters, a figure chosen expressly to symbolise the year of victory. But VisualPolitik fans, there are two details of this cathedral that are truly fascinating. The first is the floor. And that's not exactly because it's made of marble from the Urals, because that's not the case. The point is that someone in the Kremlin came up with the idea of melting down weapons and tanks seized from Nazi Germany to make the floor of a temple. The goal is that if one day you ever visit the main cathedral of the Russian armed forces, every step you take will have you trampling on the vile fascist enemy. The other most remarkable element of this cathedral are its mosaics. It is possibly one of the Orthodox temples that brings together the most mosaics in the whole world. But what makes them unique is their theme. Next to the religious images, there are other mosaics that justify events in recent Russian history. How recent? Well, it turns out not as recent as they had planned.
Russia ditches Putin mosaic in army church.
The design they were already working on can be seen on the screen. But it seems that, in the end, they found it a bit too much to elevate Putin to the altars. At least, as long as he is still the president of the country. Of course, the rest of the mosaics are not to be missed either. They are dedicated to the Soviet and Russian armies. There is a very significant one in which two angels look down on a group of soldiers with their modern weapons. A list commemorates a long series of conflicts. Soviet interventions to crush the revolution in Hungary, the Prague Spring, and the invasion of Afghanistan. Also added are the two Russian wars in Chechnya and other more recent missions that Russian propaganda calls restoring peace in Georgia, the return of Crimea, and the fight against international terrorism in Syria. And you know what? In other matters, not so much, but here, the Russians are forward-thinking. They have left room for adding more conflicts in the future. Yes, that's right, Ukraine will soon join this kind of national reminder. Of course, we are missing perhaps the most important feature of all. Listen up.
The besieged fortress.
Russia knows that it is no longer the Soviet Union of the Cold War era, that it is no longer one of the two dominant superpowers on the planet. But Putin refuses to play a secondary role, and we have seen it. Indeed, we have witnessed it in Ukraine, where for months Putin had the country surrounded by land, sea, and air, until he finally attacked. Also that Russia would continue to be seen as a great superpower. And keep in mind that Russia no longer means only Russia, but also of the other countries that formed the Soviet zone of influence. In this way, the Russian government is sending a very clear message. Let everyone know that Russian interests do not end where Russia's borders end. Something similar was advocated in late January by Vladimir Putin, parliamentary leader of United Russia, Putin's party, when he asked the Kremlin for support for pro-Russian separatists in the Donbass. Look at this.
В связи с этим мы обращаемся к руководству нашей страны оказать помощь Луганской и Донецкой республикам в виде поставок, необходимой для сдерживания агрессии военной продукции, а также предпринять все необходимые меры для обеспечения безопасности граждан.
And take note, because here we have one of the big key aspects of the Kremlin's marketing. The Russian government has been preparing its citizens for conflict for years. To this end, it presents Russia as a fortress under siege. Their aim is to make Russians believe that they are surrounded by enemies, and therefore have to be prepared to defend the homeland. They often even draw parallels with the attack on the Soviet Union in the Second World War. And naturally, from the comfort of our sofas in our homes, we can think, bah, how exaggerated is this Putin? But the truth is that this message does resonate in Russian society. It really does. In a recent survey conducted by the Levada Center for Sociological Research, look at what the second concern of Russian citizens is. More than half of Russians are really panicking about the possibility of a world war. Not a war in Ukraine, but a full-scale world war. It is evident that the Russian propaganda around the besieged fortress story is having an effect. And that's why headlines like this one are always music to the Kremlin's ears.
NATO countries urge to supply more weapons to Ukraine.
The pretext Putin needs to do as he pleases is that of security and alleged threats. Because, come on, obviously most ordinary Russians don't want a war. Russians are like you and me. They want to work, they want prosperity, they want freedom. But naturally, that patriotism that has been instilled by the Kremlin for decades makes Russians feel obliged to defend their Russian brothers in the Donbass. The successful annexation of Crimea in 2014 boosted Russian patriotism, and at the same time, it was useful for Putin to conceal from his own people that the Russian economy was no longer growing at the same pace as it was at the beginning of the century. So, given what we have seen, it should come as no surprise that the Kremlin is trying to repeat the move with a Russia hit by pandemics, inflation, and corruption allegations. In other words, we cannot rule out that the whole conflict is a genuine diversionary maneuver. Certainly, there was not many other reasons. But having come to this point, it's your turn. What's your take on the attack on Ukraine? Leave us your comments below, and if you found this video interesting, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel whilst you're there. All the best, I'll see you next time.